This question have a four part. The first part lets you create a class called person, and the person have a two attribute we call field or attribute, last name, first name, and you should have a getter setter method, get first name, get last name, or set. Uh, you may need a constructor, something like that, right? So you already know that. The second part that you define a couple. A couple have a bride, have a groom, and also you need to have a getter setter uh, and constructor. Sometimes if you have constructor, because constructor set the values, you don't need a setter anymore. Right? And the third class is the wedding. Wedding have a couple. Uh, Wedding also have a date and a location. Right? So you need to. This is the, in other words, the wedding, the couple who are going to be married, is the first attribute. Date, second attribute. Location, the third attribute. We need to define that one. Then lastly, you need to define a task, which is a Java program have a main method you can run it. All the other three, because they are definition, they just declare classes, so you don't need to have a main method, right? So for this project, I'm going to use something called NetBean. NetBean is an integrated um, development kit, which means you don't need to manually call the compiler anymore. You don't need to use the Notepad++, and you don't need to, like, I read error message to debug code. This one is integrated together. So I'm going to create a new project. Always start a new project. I'm going to choose and Java application, choose next. And don't create a new method. I'm going to name it called wedding project, because this project can have a multiple file. I don't want you to create any file for me, right? And finish. Okay, then I have my default package. Write new Java class. This one called person. You have to use the, okay. Yes, this is person. Inside your person class, you need to have a first name, last name based on the question, right? First name, last name. And you need a constructor and you need a getter, because like I mentioned, you already have a constructor. So you don't need a setter sometime. But if you do want one, you can have one, right? So let me go back to my NetBean. In here, you need two private attribute, first name, last name, and you do need a constructor. Constructor is a method have the same name with the class name, which means, and it has to be public, right? So this is a constructor. See, the constructor name has to be the same name with class name. You take two parameters and assign these two, which means the first name, last name, to the attribute, which is the field of your class. And you can have a setter. I think how to generate. I think we can generate a setter from here. Complete code. Uh, Not this. Let me see. I want to automatically generate the getter method. No, let me see if I can do that. No, forget about it. So let me manually type it. The getter should be get first name and return first name. And I'm going to align them together. Right? See, get first name. This is public. You cannot directly access the private attribute, so you have to provide a public interface, get last name. And the same thing for new another one called Java class called second one called couple. And in your couple class, you should define based on the definition, should have a bride, groom, and you all know what that means, right? And you have to have a constructor and also have a getter setters. So I'm gonna save your time. Go back to yes. You have a two field. You have a constructor and you have a getter, right? And the third class should be vetting. Vetting. And in vetting, you should have a couple and date, the vetting date and the location. And you also need to have a constructor and getters, get location, get vetting date, get couple. Right? Because you are using this one, so you have to import Java, everything from Java, right? Yeah. After you have that import, so that the error message is gone. So this is a three field constructor and get method, right? So we don't need setter. I'm still looking for how to. You can auto generate the getter setters, so you don't need to. I think from source. So you can find that later. No, so you don't need to physically type this one. So after you have these three classes, you need to create another class called task vetting. This one have a min method because you need to enter the vetting date, the bride name, last name, first name, the groom, first name and last name, and display the information, right? So that one is going to be a little complicated. So what you need to do is right click on another class, Java class. This class should be test, writing, and finish. You don't have a min method, you can type min method. I forgot to type a min method, so you have to type a min method, right? And again, this is the required format. You cannot change. If you change, then Java don't recognize that min method. So the test waiting, you have to have a input. So you have to import uh, time util scanner, and I think that's two you need, right? Then you need first you need to create a keyboard, then enter the wedding day, month, and year. So in order to save you some time, uh, I just yeah, you define scanner keyboard KB and declare three variable month, day, year, and the first one um, enter month, enter day, enter year, and this is the first name, last name, and the location for the next value we need to do. So you have a year, you have the three value, month, day, and year. You can define a variable called locale date, which is wedding date. You can call locale date of past year, month, day to that. Then you can do enter the first name of a bride, the last name of a bride, right? And you based on that two value. In other words, what you need to do here is enter the first name of bride. Then you create a you have a first name for bride, so you can create a person called bride and pass that two value into the constructor. So you understand why we need a constructor, right? Constructor, you call the same. The constructor is the same, like I mentioned, the same name with the class. So when you call the constructor, you're gonna create a person that have a first name, last name, like that. You do the same thing for groom. This line is necessary because when you enter an integer, then you want to enter a string. You have to call that line because there is a key, enter key buffered in your system. So don't just do it, so, right? To erase that keyboard, enter key, then accept a new value. So this is create another person called groom. Do the same thing. You you don't need to declare two first name last name because this is the temporary variable. You use for bride, then you override with groom. You create a person. Then these two variable don't uh, don't use that anymore. It's not useful anymore. Then after you have a groom and a bride, you can create a couple. You call the constructor of couple. Then you can ask for the wedding location of wedding, location of wedding. You give a prompt. Where is the location? Then you assign the keyboard location to this. Then you have a couple, you have a date, you have a location. You can create an instance of wedding. Wedding, right? Because wedding, you see that wedding need couple, locate date and location, and you have all of them when you get here. So you create one. Next one, you can define a display the information. You have to define another. If I, this is good design. Don't define another one called display wedding